Welcome, everybody, to one of our first installments asking the deep and varied questions about the whys of worship. With me is our Director of Worship Arts, Robin Kaufman Anderson, and Jonathan Sprang, who, working with Robin, is developing a real blend of our 9 o'clock service. One of the questions we want to deal with tonight is, why do you play that secular song before we start worship? Why aren't they playing How Great Thou Art? Well, we're here to investigate that question. Robin?
Okay, so first of all, we've talked about these cover songs. What is a cover song?
So,
What is a cover song, Sprang?
in musical terms, a cover song is when an artist does a song by another band. So a cover song is, hey, I'm going to do this song. It's performed by someone else. Now, what's funny is in the church, we always do cover songs. Most of the church music we sing was written and played and performed by someone else first. So we're just playing the cover songs. The unique thing about this is when we talk about cover songs in this context, what we mean and what I mean is that we're talking about that taking a secular song, a song that isn't necessarily written for the church, and using it to prep the day for what we're going to talk about that is spiritual. There's a division at times between those things that are sacred and those things that are secular, those things that are inside the church, those things that are out. And we're just kind of bringing a little bit of that flavor in to kind of set up the day for a number of reasons.
Okay, so why would you want to have these cover songs in church?
Well, I'll jump in. One, because sometimes they're just really popular songs that I enjoy hearing, and it surprises me to hear them within the church context. I remember asking you and Mark the question, have there ever been a time when we would have secular songs that we know have spiritual meaning? Have we done those in church? And both of you said no. And I immediately wondered, well, why not? Because I know when I listened to U2 and Bono play their music, these are a set of Christians in a secular band who play music that very transparently at points brings us into the sacred. Secular song pulling us into conversations with ourselves and with God about the things that matter deeply, that matter spiritually. Am I on the right track?
You definitely are.
Okay.
And I think the beautiful thing about this is it's very biblical. There's theologians and scholars who would say that there are a number of psalms in our Bible that were actually not songs about Yahweh. They were songs about Baal or Asherah, other gods of that era. And the people of God, the people that follow our tradition said, your God didn't do that. Our God did. Your God didn't do that. Our God did. As a way of claiming, of seeing that
Right.
truth is found there, just a little tweaking, and now it's fully what we believe.
Well, in a related vein, Charles Wesley, John Wesley's brother, one of the most famous hymn writers, not just in the Methodist tradition, but in the Nazarene tradition that you came out of, they weren't entirely original. Charles wrote lyrics, but he would often use tunes that were popular in the local pubs because it was music that people enjoyed. It got their attention. It was something they'd start to run the beat with, but then he would put it to sacred lyrics, and there was this blend, there was this merge. So this isn't unprecedented.
Yeah, and just one example that, while it wasn't by Charles Wesley, is Green Sleeves.
Oh.
Everybody knows Green Sleeves, Christmas tune. It seems like a Christmas tune because we're used to hearing What Child Is This?
I'm pretty sure Santa wrote it.
Yeah, it's not What Child Is This? It's Green Sleeves. It's a folk tune, but the Christian songwriters took it and made a song out of it because it was popular and it gave them an endpoint to reaching people that were far from God.
Okay, so some of these artists that we're talking about doing cover songs of, maybe they probably aren't Christian. They probably don't they're not living a Christian lifestyle. Why would we want to do their music when we're here to worship God and these artists, God is far away? Why would we want to do their song and honor their song?
Well, I think it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier in the secular and sacred. At a point in our history, we divided what was God's and what wasn't. What God was in, which was the sacred, and what God was not in, which is secular. And those divides have been with us for hundreds of years in the church. And so there's something about recognizing that all truth is God's truth. And so if we hear something that brings to mind something spiritual, if we hear something in a song, no matter who wrote it and no matter what their intent, we can claim that and we can say, I'm gonna use that to reach people. I'm gonna use that to point people in a direction to where they may not have understood, they may not have ever heard how great thou art, but they've heard this song and that opened them up to hearing, what else do you have to say? Because that was fun, you know?
The theological word for what you described so well is redeeming. God can redeem anything, even death. So while the artist may not be living a Christian lifestyle, in fact, maybe the last thing he or she has on their mind, God is able to use that music, even those lyrics, in the ear, in the mind of the hearer in a really wonderful, redemptive way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there probably are some people out there that will say, hey, I am not comfortable with this. I come to church to hear, songs about God and songs about Christ and Christ's love for me. I'm not comfortable with this. What can be my response to them when they say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this?
When I go to a concert, name the artist, I don't know all the tunes. And in fact, there are some of the tunes I don't even like. But I look around and see that it's really meaningful. Some of the people in the crowd who are flicking their lighters and getting all excited and waving their hands, and I just have to kind of wait because I know my turn's coming. This song is meaningful to others. There'll be one that's meaningful to me. And if we have a spirit of generosity and understanding that we're here to praise a God who is calling all persons, in this instance through music, then I would hope we could be generous and trust that God's going to use this music for somebody else. Even if it doesn't particularly tickle my fancy, there will be something that will. That's the beauty of community, something for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think just a second on that, I came from a church. There was a church plant in the Church of the Nazarene, a Wesleyan denomination, and we didn't have any traditions we had to follow because we just started from scratch. So we just kind of went where God led, and this was one of the things that we did. And the purpose behind us doing it was to make the guest that was walking in off the street, making them comfortable. Yeah. So while it might make us as Christians uncomfortable because it's something that's unfamiliar to us, it's okay, I think, for us as Christians to make ourselves a little bit uncomfortable so that person that doesn't know God can feel a little bit comfortable, so they can be at ease, because what we're about to ask of them is to stand and sing songs you don't know.
Right.
We're going to ask you to listen to a sermon that's 15 to 20 minutes long using words you may not have ever heard before. So starting out with a song that they're familiar with kind of hopefully can ease their minds to going, okay, I want to hear more. And that way they can walk away going, that was pretty fun. And maybe they got something from the message, but it started with hearing a song that they were familiar with. One last thing I'll say about that is that then maybe 3 weeks later, when they're at the Kroger and they're buying dinner, and they hear that song that we played as the opener that wasn't a Christian song.
I heard that in church.
I heard that in church. And then their mind will go, even if it doesn't go to the point of like, well, let me think about what the message was. Why did they do that song?
They don't remember that.
Right. They may not go that direction. They might. But even if they don't, it'll still bring to mind God. Yeah. It'll still set up these signposts throughout our lives and in our communities, wherever we are. We hear that song that was played in church, and our minds are drawn to, wow, we did that in church. I can't believe that. Or we did that in church. Oh, I really like that. So it gives us an opportunity to speak into people's lives outside the church walls, as well as when they're here.
Start where they are.
Exactly.
That's a great answer.
Mm-hmm. It's been very enlightening.
I would just observe that in a couple of times we have the privilege of sitting up on the dais and watching the congregation. And inevitably, regardless of what song is played, sacred or secular, there's always going to be some folks for whom it's, and that's just individual taste. But I would want you all to know that looking out, there's also the very folks that we are hoping to reach with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And they are folks that are tapping, they are raising their hands, they are bobbing back and forth, and they're probably younger than you are. We rejoice in the ways that we are finding musical avenues by which to touch people's heart and remind them of the God who loves them. Anything else? Have we covered the waterfront?
If I could say one more thing.
Sure.
You said it to start with. Sometimes it's just fun.
That's just fun.
And I think sometimes church, you walk in and you sometimes feel it's a little, I got to be on my best behavior and I got to dress up nice and I got to be, sometimes somebody walking in, I can feel a little stuffy.
Really? Your best
This is my
t-shirt.
best t-shirt.
Yes.
It can feel a little stuffy.
Absolutely.
And so if we open with a song that's fun and that's a little silly, maybe it's a little tongue in cheek, it helps, again, not only our guests' guards to let down, it lets us loosen up a little bit. Lets us go, okay, I see what you did there. And so we can just enjoy being together as the family of God as a part of the whole thing. So it opens up some fun opportunities, and hopefully we'll get to do some of those in the near future.
So just know that when we meet for worship planning, we don't just throw things together. We think intentionally, mindfully, and prayerfully about those selections which would reach the greatest number of people. We hope at least at one point in every worship service, and we hope that always is going to include you. Thanks so much for joining Robin, Sprang, and myself. Stay tuned for a next edition of Why Do They Do That in Church? God bless.